Hi, friends, and welcome to the Heartful Parent Podcast. I'm your host, Christy Keating. In this podcast, we talk about it all, our parenting, our partnering, and our professional lives, because they are all a part of us, and we were never meant to do this alone. Hey there. Hi. How are you? Welcome back to another week and another episode of the Heartful Parent Podcast. I'm really excited to be sharing with you today an interview that I actually did a while ago. And this was actually an interview that I did for the 2023 Safe Parenting Summit that was held in February of 2023. And this interview is with a colleague of mine who I have long held in high esteem, a woman by the name of Lenore Skenazy. And when I reached out to Lenore and asked her to be a part of the 2023 Safe Parenting Summit, I was so thrilled when she said yes. And what you're about to hear today is the interview that followed that yes. It's what was shared with the summit participants in 2023. And if you were a part of the summit in 2023 or in 2024, because we did this as a replay, this conversation may sound familiar, but even if you've heard it before, I hope that you will listen again. And here's why. Last week on the podcast, you heard me share my thoughts about ways that we can help our children grow more independence, grow, their sense of competence and capability and their sense of confidence, and how frustrated I was during a recent visit to the airport when the airline that my daughter was booked to fly on wouldn't let her fly unless she was babysat the entire way by a flight attendant. And despite my reassurances and my acceptance, et cetera, that she would be just fine and could indeed navigate her way down the jetway by herself. And as I was recording that for last week's episode and sort of thinking through that incident, it made me think of two other interviews. One was on the podcast a little while ago, maybe a month ago or two, with Melissa Griffin, HR mom, who talks about how we can help our kids, build more competence in the world. And then this one with Lenore Skenazy, where she talks about, all the things that we're afraid of that we don't need to be afraid of, and all the reasons or the ways in which we're sort of screwing our kids up, frankly, by not letting them build a sense of self, a sense of identity, and a sense of competence out in the world. And I thought this was a really lovely follow-up to my thoughts last week. Because one of the things that I shared with you is that we need to stop parenting from a place of fear. And I know Lenore would wholeheartedly agree with me. And that's essentially what we talk about in this interview. So yes, this is recorded from a previous event. But it is so good. Lenore is so wise. And whether you've heard it before or not, I hope that you will tune in to my conversation with Lenore Skenazy of Free Range Kids, author of the book Free Range Kids, founder of the Let Grow Foundation. There's just so much good stuff here. So enjoy, and thanks for joining me.
Okay.
I'm making you small, so I'm looking at the right place, but I'd rather just look at you here. Does that look bad when I'm looking at you here versus?
No, it looks great. Yep.
That doesn't matter?
No.
Okay. Then I'm doing this.
Excellent. All right. Welcome back, everyone. I'm really excited to introduce you to Lenore Skenazy. I just have to say, Lenore was a huge influence on my own parenting when I first became a parent 13 years ago, because I read her fantastic book, Free Range Kids, which may not be showing up on the screen
Oh,
there.
no.
I know. But
I had
it's,
one I'd
let's
show
see if
you.
I can get it forward. Oh, the camera does not want to do that for us. There we go.
There it
Free
is.
Range Kids, fabulous book, written by Lenore, all about how we can give our kids more freedoms and parent with less fear, which, as you know, is part of the theme of this entire summit. This book grew out of a newspaper column that Lenore wrote called Why I Let My 9-Year-Old Ride the Subway Alone. And it created a media firestorm. I remember the firestorm, and Lenore got the nickname America's Worst Mom. She went on to write this book, which really has turned into a movement. And she is now the head of Let Grow, or the founder of Let Grow.
Like that.
She is,
Right.
she's spoken everywhere from DreamWorks to Microsoft headquarters to schools across America, and the Bulgarian Happiness Festival. She's spoken here in my hometown, Seattle, and I had the privilege of hearing her speak then, and I'm really, really excited to have her here today. So welcome, Lenore.
Thank you, Christy. That's reminding me of the Bulgarian Happiness Festival. That was so fun. I got to actually go to Sofia, Bulgaria. They weren't really happy. So that was my job. I'm not sure I left them that much happier, but I tried.
But you tried. Well,
there were protests in the streets, not about me, but they were protesting. I don't know, something horrible was happening there. I can't remember what.
Oh dear. Well, I'm glad it wasn't about you, since
No.
you sort of had your media firestorm before that. But I'd love to start by just asking you more about that article that you wrote, like, letting your child ride the New York subway, and then writing an article that just blew up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all I can say is it's that the 9-year-old who rode the subway is 24. So it's been a very long time. And yet just today, I wrote an article last week that was about a mom getting arrested for letting her son walk home from school, not from school, from the car ride. And Fox News came here to videotape me about that. And I was just watching the piece. And again, it was like, free range, this crazy idea. Maybe it sounds good, but has it gone too far? And I'm like, wow, the media just cannot resist slamming parents for any decision they make. And especially if they believe that kids can be okay some of the time without our eyes directly on them. Somehow that is the most controversial third rail of parenting today, even though I'm sure, Christy, when you were growing up, you had some time outside your home on a bike without your parents.
Yes.
Correct?
Indeed, I did. Oh, I had lots of time without my parents, and did things that would probably horrify most parents now. And here I am.
Well, tell me what you're thinking that would be so horrifying. I mean, like, we all say that, but let's think about what that really means.
Yeah.
Is it horrifying, or is it just somehow evaporated? Right?
Yeah. Well, of course, a lot of it was playing outside, right? And riding my bike with all my friends all around the neighborhood and beyond. I walked to school quite a lengthy distance. I sound like, when I was
Both
a kid,
ways,
right?
with the snow, but it's true. I walked to school too. It wasn't hard. It wasn't far. It was cold. It was Chicago, but yeah.
Yep. We crossed a really busy street to do that. The thing that I was sort of thinking that might horrify many parents is I actually lived on a dead end street, and on the other side of that dead end was a horse farm. And I used to sneak under the fence and go back. I was a avid horse lover as a child, and used to go back into this huge pasture. And I would take a little length of rope, and I would go back there and put it around the horses' necks and lead them around the pasture.
Wow.
Needless to say, the owner of the horses wasn't such a big fan of that plan. But my parents weren't worried about me. I think they knew what I was doing. They knew I'd been around horses, and they were really unconcerned. And then we also just spent time, climbing trees and playing in the woods that were near the horse farm. And they did not blink an eye at that.
Right. So this is what I'm going to sort of focus on for the next 58 minutes isn't that interesting? It's not that your parents didn't love you. It's not that your parents didn't care if you lived or died. And it's not that your parents didn't have an inkling that, you were doing some of these things, right? And yet they felt confident allowing you to go outside without them. And they weren't worried about other people's judgment of them either. And
Right.
that's what's really changed so dramatically in a generation, to the point where letting our kids do almost anything that we did is controversial, sometimes illegal. And certainly it's just strange that something so normal has become taboo. It's like, it's like you're not allowed to drink milk anymore or something. It's like, it's not that big a deal. Why don't we just let kids do it? It builds their bones. So I'm interested in what you think you got out of that time.
Yeah, it's a great question. I certainly think I gained confidence.
Got to be pretty confident to go up to a horse that,
Yeah.
is not yours on somebody else's land and lasso it.
Arguably illegal then as well, but I would say I gained a sense of, I was having fun, right?
Imagine that.
Right.
Yeah.
I was having a great time. I was learning social skills because often, my friends were with me as we were riding bikes and doing all of those things, and sort of navigating those social skills without our parents playing goalkeeper, referee, as we were doing that. I was certainly getting physical, activity and strength and, coordination and all of those things. And honestly, I think, especially with the horses, for me, there was a sense of wonder that came with that. And I feel like as I watch even my own kids, that is missing today.
Yeah. I just feel like I should leave now, and we should all think about our childhoods and why we don't let our own kids have the wonder, the confidence, the social skills, the exploration, the curiosity, the joy, the fun, the fresh air, and the fitness in every realm that you got from some unsupervised, unstructured time.
Yeah.
And why am I thinking about these things 15 years after I let my son ride the subway alone? My son wanted to ride the subway for the same reason you went to those horses.
Mm-hmm.
It's a form of transportation. It's kind of bigger than him, something that he was very interested in. And it's in our environment. We're living in New York City. So, I think I'd be terrified to go up to a horse, frankly, but I'm not terrified at all to take the subway, and neither was he. And what you get from that is something that you cannot get with an adult always there. Right? I'm not saying adults should abandon their kids. It doesn't really matter if the parents live or die. Although you'll notice in every Disney movie, the parents do die so that the kids can go on an adventure. Otherwise, it's really boring. But the point is that we have become convinced, and this is why I'm mad at our culture and not at today's parents. Our culture has made it abnormal to take our eyes off our kids. We're told that they're going to be in danger, either physically, emotionally, socially, academically. Somehow they're going to be hurt or fall behind if we're not with them all the time. And that is the big lie of our parenting era. The idea that when we're with our kids, they're learning and they're safe. And when we're not with them, they're inert and in danger.
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing to see when, it's sort of like the frog in the pot of boiling water. You don't know how to get out until it's too late. It's like we've just been sort of eroding childhood freedom for a generation or two. It's like, oh, well, now we're going to set up a drop-off line at the school so everybody can be dropped off. And we're going to say that there should be a parent waiting at the bus stop when the kids get off so that they are not walking home by themselves. And we're just going to require waivers for anything. And we're going to keep the school, the playground off limits unless there's a parent with the kids. And pretty soon, we're going to ask the parents to stay during soccer practice. We're going to have the parents come in for the reading buddies and the publication parties and the this and the that, and certainly supervising all the school events. And none of it seems crazy in and of itself, any of these things. I remember when our school stopped letting us walk our kids to the classroom, I was incensed. It's like, what do you mean? So I too was breathing in the same air that, of course, you should always be with your kids until you hand them off to another adult whom you trust to also supervise them.
Right.
And it has taken a long time to recognize that it's really hard to see how important, how fundamental free, unsupervised, unstructured time is for kids when we don't see it anywhere anymore. And the only way I can show it to people for the time being is to have them go back. Yeah. Because that's the only place it still exists. And so that's what I like to do. I like to ask people about their own childhoods. And sometimes I even ask, maybe this will work with you. I'll ask, do you see a thread between something that you love to do as a kid, pointlessly, just for fun, just because it intrigued you, and what you're doing today? Do you see any connection?
Hang on one second. We're going to edit this out. My cat is pawing at the door.
Okay, you can't hear him from here.
She's meowing and pawing, and I'm like,
Okay.
if you can hear that, that will be really distracting.
Absolutely couldn't hear.
Okay, great. A thread between what I was doing as a kid and what I'm doing now. I mean, I definitely see some of the things that I still love to do are part of my life. I still love horses.
Oh, you do? Okay, cool.
I do. I don't have one, but I still love them and ride when I can. I still love to ride my bike. That's one of my primary forms of exercise. And I think the dynamics that I learned, the social dynamics, the confidence, the independence, those have certainly been important for me as an adult. In my work as a lawyer and now in my work as a parent coach, in just feeling like I knew what mattered to me because I was given an opportunity to figure that out as a kid. And then to feel really, I think the two biggest things, and I said these words already, but it's that sense of confidence and that sense of independence. And now as a business owner, the idea that, hey, if I don't know how to do something, I can figure it out.
Oh, yeah. Right. Resourcefulness. Yeah.
Resourcefulness, because I had to be resourceful sometimes. When we got ourselves into situations that maybe weren't perfect, we had to,
unlike regular life, which is perfect. So you don't really need those skills.
Right. Right.
Right.
Yeah. I would say that's another one I would add in there in a big way, is that sense of resourcefulness. And yeah, I can do this. I can figure this out.
So when you talk about the resourcefulness, that there's some alarming statistics about kids right now. And one of them is that anxiety is pretty much through the roof.
Yeah.
And anxiety is the sense that something is going to happen. It's going to be bad. You won't be able to handle it, and you'll be hurt forever. I mean, that's the sort of sphere of what anxiety encompasses. And the opposite of anxiety is like, something's going to happen. I'll roll with the punches. Even if it doesn't work out, I'll still be okay. And that's what you get when things aren't perfect, right? Yeah. We spend a lot of our time as parents, and trust me, I tried to have the most perfect birthday parties and everything, so I'm in there too, but we try to make life perfect for our kids. We don't want them to be frustrated. We don't want them to have a friend betraying them. We don't want them to struggle too hard. And so we don't want them to be scared. Fear has become something that children aren't supposed to experience, which is odd because I grew up reading Grimm's fairy tales, and if they're not afraid by those, I don't know what's going to scare you. Maybe Stephen King. So the lie that has been fed to us is that our job is to make our kids' lives frustration, fear, and confusion and misery free. Mm-hmm. And if we're not doing that, we're falling down on the job. And the only way to really make that happen, of course, is to supervise and structure everything that our kids are doing.
Yeah.
And so we do. And like I said, I don't blame parents, because it's a helicopter culture that has been sort of gradually dripped down on us and put us in its grip. And now we don't have much choice. You're supposed to stay at the parties, right? You're supposed to walk your kid to school. You're supposed to stand at the bus stop. It's just become the norm. But it's a norm that's harmful. And, foot binding became the norm for about 1,000 years in China. It's like, oh, you don't want your daughter to have a big, fat, ugly, normal foot, right? You should break it when they're 6 months old and turn it into this tiny little thing and shove it into a baby type shoe. And that seemed normal. The only reason I'm bringing up such a weird example is because things that are very distorted, strange, and dangerous and bad can end up seeming normal if the whole culture goes along with it. And right now we have a culture going along with the idea that our kids are in constant danger. They're bumbling nincompoops who will, make a friendship go bad or fail a test or run into the street or do something horrible unless we're there all the time. And the ironic thing is that when we are there all the time, this is why I don't like the helicopter culture, not because I don't like parents who are helicoptering, because like I said, I'm part helicopter on my mom's side. It's that I hate the imperative to always be with our kids, because inevitably when you're with your kid or with your dog or with anybody that you love and you see doing something wrong, you will fix it. It's human. It's not helicopter parent behavior. It's human behavior. You see your kid crossing the street, looking at his phone, and you're going to say, put down that phone, watch out. And if you weren't there, chances are pretty likely that your kid would not be looking at his phone because you wouldn't be helping him cross the street. And so if we want our kids to develop the very things that we want them to, including safely crossing the street, we can't be there all the time doing it for them. And the thing about adults is that we're better at a whole lot of things. I mean, we're better at building sandcastles.
Right.
Don't do it this way, do it that way. Does that make sense? No. We have a better strategy for climbing a tree. Should we tell them? I think they're going to figure it out. And the way when they are figuring it out, they're becoming us, right? The idea that you can go from like not knowing anything to being as smart as, middle-aged us is ridiculous. There's all these steps in between. So to constantly say, why aren't you doing it? Or I'll make the teams, or you guys are arguing, I'll just solve it. The tree is first base. That seems helpful because you've jumped in and you've come up with a solution, you've problem solved, but that means that your kids haven't problem solved.
Yeah.
So the only solution that I've seen to that is to make it normal again and to not be with our kids all the time. And so that's what Let Grow is dedicated to doing. So Let Grow is the nonprofit that grew out of Free Range Kids. And our goal is to make it easy, normal, and legal to take your eyes off your kids. And the normal part is seeing other people do it. And the easy part of easy, normal, and legal is we try to gently, but persistently push parents into just letting go once. Because once they do, they get this rush of confidence and joy and fun, and the sun comes shining through when they realize like, oh, I let my kid, play outside for a couple hours, and she came in and she met a horse and she, picked dandelions, and she's got a scratch on her knee and she's proud of it. That's the joy that we have been deprived of as parents because we're always with our kids. The joy is seeing what they can do without us, and we never get that experience.
Right. Yeah. And instead we get exhaustion and irritation, right? Which isn't great for our kids either. Yeah. Or for us.
It's not great for us. It's, parents think that if they're not like entertaining or educating or assisting their kids all the time, they're doing it wrong. And, I've been at this a long time, so I've interviewed a bunch of people. And one of them is an anthropologist named David Lancey, who wrote the book, The Anthropology of Childhood. So he's studied this for a long time. And he said, so many other countries go, why you get on floor with child? This is crazy. Are you 3 years old? Do you lap water from a bowl like a dog? Why you play like child? You know? And I don't know what that accent was, you know, somewhere between like caveman and Russian. But the point is that like other countries, no one plays with their kids. It's seen as strange, pointless, almost insane behavior. And we think, wow, my kid is bored. Maybe I should just get down on the floor and start playing roly-poly or Star Wars or dolls. And sometimes that's fun. And I have nothing against doing it for fun, but you don't have to do it if it's boring.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, you know, I mean, we hear that play is so good for kids. It's how they learn. And so then we think, because of this culture, right?
Right.
That, well, then we need to
create
play
with them.
Right. Right. I'll play with them. I'll create the opportunities for play. Right. I'll structure it in a certain way, et cetera, et cetera.
It will be playful learning. Gosh, darn it. Yeah.
So Lenore, I mean, as we're talking about this, and yes, it's a cultural thing because, I mean, we walk our daughter to school because that's what is expected, right? She's not allowed to walk home by herself. They wouldn't actually let her leave in the winter. I know.
They let her leave in the spring?
Well, that's a good question. So when my older daughter was in elementary school, she did some after school activities, and it was those activities that she was not allowed to walk home from because there's a busy street she'd have to cross and there was no crossing guard and et cetera.
Don't they get a crossing guard instead of making every parent individually, you know, have to end their day at 4 PM and come pick up the kids?
Right. Right.
I mean, that's something like agitate for a crossing guard. It's not impossible.
You're right. It's not. But everyone, you know, and I have to put myself in this category.
Oh, me too.
Okay. All right. I'll be there to pick her up, you know? And so, we know that it's a cultural thing, but how, because it's been a rapid shift, right? In
really rapid,
1 or 2 generations.
Yep.
How did that start to happen? Do you have any sense?
Do I have any? Let's hold up my book again.
Yeah. Right.
Do I have any sense? Yeah, I think I do.
Yeah. Where
a sense
did that
start
to filter into our lives? And, you know, you said use the analogy of the frog in the pot. We didn't realize it was happening.
Oh yeah. No.
So where did it start?
Yeah. Lately, my new analogy is that we didn't see that the rainforest was shrinking. And I feel like childhood independence has been shrinking like that. And we also didn't notice it. And I wish I was Al Gore with that PowerPoint and people would pay much attention. But the way it started is, you know, there's a bunch of factors. I wish there was just one because that would be so dramatic, but it's not. So there are 5 reasons I now think, you know, 5 biggies that we changed so much. And the first is the media. I mean, if you recall the 80s at all, there were a couple of very high profile kidnappings. There was Eitan Pates in 1979 and Adam Walsh in 1982. Adam Walsh's dad is John Walsh. He started America's Most Wanted. He started the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They put the pictures on the milk cartons that said, "Have you seen me missing?" And I have to call them out because they didn't explain that the vast majority of those pictures were not children taken by strangers, were not kidnappings. They were runaways or children who were taken by a parent in a divorce custody battle.
Yeah.
Which is bad, you know, that's a problem itself, but it's not the problem of stranger danger that we came to believe. And
it's not the creepy guy in the white van snatching.
It's not right. I always say if I drive a Tesla, if I was a guy, I drive like a silver Tesla, but I'm not planning actually to become a predator. But anyways, at the same time that was starting, 2 things. One is there was a mini series about the Adam Walsh kidnapping that broke all ratings records. We don't remember it now, but that was a watershed because the TV executives are not there to inform you. They're not there to help you. They're there to make money. They see that a lot of people eyeballs are watching that. Get me 1,000. And they did. And then at the same time, that was also when cable TV was born. And until cable TV came along, there was a set number of channels and a set number of hours for each different element, you know, news and soap operas and whatever. Suddenly you had 24 hours to fill with news day after day after day. And what's the most gripping story of all is the story of a white middle-class child, or upper middle class, even better, kidnapped by a stranger. And so I think we got like 10 years of like all John Bonet all the time, John Bonet Ramsey's murder, and then Elizabeth Smart. And these became part of the fabric of today's parents growing up, right? They were kids when this was going on. And McGruff, the crime dog, comes in and tells your school, you know, watch out for strangers. And it's like, actually, McGruff, you should watch out for people in your family and close personal friends. And, you know, and rather than scaring kids and telling them that all strangers are out to get them, I constantly remind people what the Boy Scouts teach, which is that there's the best way to protect your child from molestation and rotten things like that is to teach them the 3 R's, which I will briefly go over right now, which are to teach your kid really young to recognize no one can touch you where your bathing suit covers. It's as simple as that. 2 is, so that's recognize, resist, run, kick, scream. You're allowed to be a total, you know, hellion if somebody is really bothering you. And then 3 is report. Somebody says something creepy, like they don't want you to tell your parents, or they're going to hurt somebody if you tell. Just, you can always tell me and I will never be mad at you. No matter what somebody else told you, no matter if they say they're going to hurt you or you gave a promise, you can always tell me I will never be mad at you. So you're trying, it's not perfect, but you're trying to keep the lines of communication as open as possible between you and your child. And it's not a scary thing to teach them, just like teaching them to stop, drop, and roll doesn't make them think every day, I'm going to be on fire. I'm going to be on fire. It's not that. So it's just, that is so much more helpful than teaching kids, don't touch any strangers. The world is terrible. There was actually an interesting study done just a couple months ago that found that teaching your kids that it's a bad, mean, unfunny, unfair, unsafe world out there, which you think is preparing your kids for the worst, right? Okay, you know, don't be taken advantage of, you know, go out there and get what's yours. It actually turns out to, the people brought up with that outlook actually have worse outcomes as adults. I mean, less happy in their relationships, making less money, worse, unsatisfied in their jobs. And I'm not sure why, but it's just interesting to note that when we think we're doing this helpful thing for our kids, that one in particular is not helpful, you know?
Yeah. And well, sort of going back just a little bit, that sort of idea that everybody's scary and everybody's out to get them is one of those things that I spend a lot of time trying to combat with parents. We need our kids to trust strangers and be able to ask for help when they need it and do all of those things. And if there was one phrase I could ban from every parent's lexicon, it would be stranger danger.
Oh, wouldn't that be great? Yeah. Actually, at one point, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which I think coined or certainly popularized that phrase, said, we regret it. We started to realize that that's not where the danger is. But they, you know, on the other hand, I think they still promote it. So anyways, one reason that we're so much more afraid today is this whole media mess, right? Where they found this story, they keep bringing it home. It's whether it's on the news or an anniversary special or Law and Order SVU, which has been going, I think, for 30 years at this point. I mean, really, it's like not a second goes by that there's not some child being, you know, kidnapped on television. So that's part of it. Secondly, we live in a litigious culture, and that sort of makes us look at life through the eyes of a lawyer. Like, is this dangerous? Could this, you know, am I allowed to do this? I'm so bummed. I was once in London for some conference, and I met a teacher who was telling me about the waiver that she has to fill out before goodbye. Are you there, Christy? Come back.
Sorry.
There she is. I thought you'd been kidnapped. Right. Wow. It can happen anytime, anywhere. No one's safe. Anyways, the teacher had this multi-page waiver that she had to fill out, or not even the waiver. It was like what she was going to do when she took the children on the field trip. What if the bus comes to a sudden stop? What if a child stands up during the bus ride? What if a child is tickling another child during the bus ride? What if a child uses a swear word? And it was like, what? You know, it was so insulting to the teacher. You know, it's like, well, she's a teacher. She'll probably figure it out. And she's a human being. She can probably figure it out. And it was like whoever invented that multi-paper thing was trying to catastrophize. I mean, you're talking about kids getting on a bus, going to the museum or the zoo or the ballet, whatever they were going to. It's not that big a deal, but it was like the D-Day. What are you going to do when the German U-boats come underneath? It's like, I don't know. It's like, well, it's not a German U-boat. It's a mean bus driver. I think you'll handle it.
Right.
So,
right.
so the whole litigious thing just makes us lose our common sense. I mean, you always hear about these crazy lawsuits. Well, the crazy lawsuits, the fact that there are crazy lawsuits means that we sort of have to be as crazy as the craziest lawsuit.
Yeah. Yeah.
In New Jersey, I must beat up on New Jersey because I live in New York City. So, but they are crazy. Here's what happened in New Jersey. So in Jersey, a kid fell off the slide and broke her arm at school, and the parents sued. And their case was that the slide was at a 35-degree angle instead of a 30-degree angle. And
goodness.
therefore, a 35-degree angle, it's not even 45, So therefore, it was dangerous. And it's like, well, what about the fact that kids had been sliding down for years and years and hadn't broke their arms? That didn't matter. The fact that one kid fell and the fact that the jury goes, oh my God, 35 degrees, that's really awful. And the parents got $170,000. So I'm very sorry about that. I'm sorry that the kid broke her arm, but I'm really sorry about the precedent that set, because the implication, the legal implication is that if something happens bad once, it is the fault of someone who must be punished. And that's this litigious outlook. Okay, well, am I ever going to be blamed? Should I worry about that? Could that happen to me? Is that safe enough? And we get to the point where you have the 7-page waivers for the kid is going to walk across the street and play on the swings for an hour. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So litigiousness is a second reason. Third reason is we have an expert culture, and I always hope that I'm not part of it, but maybe I am. But the experts are always telling you you're doing something wrong. And there's magazines and books and lectures and tips. I really think our brains have been sucked out by the tip culture, like 10 tips to walking outside your door, 10 tips to getting this safely and successfully to your mouth and swallowing without choking or hitting yourself or gouging your eye out. It's like, what should I do? It's like, gently lift, not too fast. So the expert culture is stuck coming up with ways to tell you that you don't have any common sense on your own. And I need an expert to teach me how to ride a motorcycle. I need an expert for everything I do online. I can't figure any of it out. I think my expert is coming through the door. It's my husband. But we don't need an expert for how to make a pretty Christmas tree or how to make the perfect, how to cut a grape so that your child won't choke. I mean, it's like everything becomes a project that you, with your own mind and your own experience here on earth, aren't ready for. And might screw up and might get your kid hurt. That's the thing. My favorite Parents Magazine cover said the 10 hidden dangers in your home. And number one was, I should have brought it out here. Number one was the laundry hamper, of course, because some of those laundry hampers are made with the wires that go around and then there's the fabric stretched over it. And you're thinking, okay, so.
Yeah, that's what
but they said, well, the scary thing, Christy, is that the wire could become detached from the fabric. And if your child was standing right there, it could slice their cornea open.
Oh my goodness.
Right. So, so there's, I mean, it's sort of like between the legal outlook and the expert outlook, nothing is safe enough. So anyways, obviously you can't have a laundry hamper in your home. I hope you have like a nice big pile in the corner. That'll look really good, especially when the guests come over. And then the fourth reason we're so afraid is that we have a marketplace, and I don't blame the marketplace. Marketplace is out there to sell stuff. And so if you can scare a parent, then you can sell them something to assuage the fear. And so there's crazy products out there. There's a spoon that changes color if the food is hot, like you couldn't figure that out.
Oh my goodness.
There's baby knee pads. There's this helmet that your kid can wear when they're learning to walk. I mean, I can barely talk about them anymore, but just go to any kind of baby supply store and go down the safety aisle and go with your oldest living relative, right? And did you need that? Did you need that? Did you need that? And you'll have a fun afternoon.
I remember when I heard you speak in Seattle and you were talking about the baby knee pads, which I had never known existed before that. And my husband and I just looking at each other thinking, what in the world does someone that weighs 15 pounds.
Right.
Need
Right.
Now, at my age, I need knee pads.
Yeah,
Right?
that's not, or also, if you're learning how to skateboard, every morning I go to a park and there's the world's worst skateboarder there. And he's like in his 20s and he is covered with padding.
Yeah.
And that seems good because I watched him fall again today. So yeah, if you're doing something that normally has padding, use it, right? I don't suggest you go out on the football field, just you in your,
Right,
your
right.
jersey, right? With nothing
Right.
underneath. But there's a difference between that and doing an activity that every human on earth has done, which is crawling. And
Yep.
I'd say the majority, I think the majority probably didn't use knee pads.
I know that I did not.
You did not. Right. And I mean, that's what's so interesting about this culture. And that I say that it's like sucking out our common sense. The fact that those can be sold at all means that somehow it's like, who are you going to trust? Me or your own lying eyes? It's like my own lying eyes showed me kids, ever since I've been born, me and everybody else somehow managed to crawl without it being so dangerous and crippling that if only we'd had an extra layer of padding, then we would have made the transition successfully.
Right.
So,
Right.
So I just want to get to the fifth reason because it's I don't even know if it's in my, so I have a second edition of Let Grow that came out last year. And I think I put this in, but maybe not. So anyways, I'll share it with you now, which is that there's this growing belief that we can control everything. And that is really aided and abetted by technology because in a way that no one could since the beginning of time, we can see our kid when they turn the corner. We can watch them as a dot on the map. We can get a little ping if they got to school successfully. We can see their grade on the Spanish quiz before they do. We can sometimes know what they've been eating. We can definitely know if they went to the party or not. You can tell their temperature from a couple states away. You can see them when they sleep. You can watch them when they sleep. You can hear them when they sleep. You can check their blood oxygen level and heart rate when they sleep. And so all this is a level of omniscience, all knowing, that was only available to God. Now available to humans, omniscience, in this convenient package.
Right.
And so it's a very horrible feeling to think that you can know everything, but you can't fix everything. And so it's driving us crazy. It's like, if you only know where your child is. And I was talking to the guy who runs Life 360, which is a monitoring service, called me up, let's talk. And he was saying, it's really good to know, what was he telling me? Something about, you want to know X or Y about your kids. And it's like, I do want to know what's happening with my kids, but I don't think I have to know in real time. And I think that something is destroyed by this surveillance. I mean, if you think about, until we had iPhones, the only people whose movements we monitored were felons on work release, right? They had the ankle monitor. We could see, they're only supposed to go to work and back again. And the reason they were monitored is because we didn't trust them, right? And so now we're monitoring our kids, and I've spoken to kids being monitored, and the frustration they feel at not being able to prove to their parents that they're good kids is it's distressing, because they want their parents to know, I said I wasn't going to go to that party and I didn't, not because I thought you were going to check me on the phone, but because I gave you my word. And to not be able to make your parents realize that you're growing up and becoming a responsible young person it's like being kept in a box. It's like, you have to let me out. You must trust me, because this is my world too. I'm not just the felon. I'm not just the chipped pet, right? I am a person. And the worst thing was them not being able to prove that they were growing up and responsible human beings.
And feeling like they were distrusted by their parents.
Feeling that there's no way to prove it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Which is, when it's sort of phrased like that, and you think about what that would feel like as a teen, if my parents had said, if I felt like I didn't have the opportunity to prove to them that I was making responsible, good choices, or that I was learning from the not so good choices, right, that I made, that I think that, well, what we're seeing obviously is that ends up really differently.
Wait, I want to go back to something you said. Learning from the things that did not go well. That goes back to our original discussion, which is that if you don't ever get a chance to get yourself out of a scrape, to explain yourself, to figure something out that's a little difficult or dicey, why do we think that you will suddenly get that ability from nowhere when you're 18 or 21 or 30? I mean, it comes from, it's like a muscle. What, you think you get muscles when you're 18? No, you have to build them up, and to not be allowed to build them up because our culture has told us we must be constantly intervening in our kids' lives is a culture that must be redirected.
Yeah. I remember hearing Julie Lifcott-Hames talk about the idea that, like, she was the dean of Stanford at one point, or a dean at Stanford. And there were parents who were having to call to wake up their college age students to make sure that they made it to class on time. Because they had never had
There's
to,
the IT department, sorry.
they had never had to do that by themselves when they lived, with their parents. And it's just sort of an extension of that idea that if we don't give our kids the opportunity to learn how to figure it out, to get to school on time, for example, as you just said, when they're then in their 20s, 30s, I don't plan on calling my children when they're 30 to make sure they're at work, right?
Yeah, I hope not. So it's also interesting. What do we consider intelligent? I mean, we consider intelligent a kid who gets, whatever there are now, 800s on their SATs. Is that more intelligent than a kid who knows to wake up and get to class?
It's a good question.
How to get out of bed on time in Guatemala. I don't know why I know this little fact, but intelligence is considered, the mark of intelligence is recognizing that something needs to be done and doing it, as opposed to, acing your verbals.
Yeah. Which I think we could all, if our generation of kids knew how to recognize something that needed to be done and do it, things would look a little differently. But as I'm sitting here thinking, so you've shared the 5 reasons, and they all make sense about how we landed here. And so the question is,
how do we get out?
Right? Because, I mean, even I, who work in this, child safety space, I know how to, and I'm a big fan of teaching parents how to talk to their kids without fear, that idea of fear-based education doesn't work. It's not effective. It's not helpful. And I'm still human, right? So I'm still influenced by the things that we hear and the things that we know that happen, because there is bad stuff that happens. So how do we as parents manage that fear for ourselves? And then how do we help our kids manage it?
Those are great questions. So having thought about them for all these years, the only thing that I've seen that changes parents and assuages the fears and restores confidence in our kids is actually letting them go, however difficult that is, and realizing that they can do some stuff on their own. And this is very hard to do as a single, an N of one, one family doing it. Okay, you can try, but I really think that it's a collective issue and should be addressed that way. And so Let Grow, when we were trying to figure out how to make it easy and normal to give kids this independence that we're talking about, we came up with everything we do is free. So I'm trying to sell you on something, but it doesn't cost money. So we recommend that schools do the Let Grow project. And that's just a fancy word for a homework assignment that teachers give their students that says, Go home and do something new on your own without your parents. And we give a big list. Actually, I'm modifying the list. Some of the things were just too pointless and simple and stupid. But anyways, good things are, run an errand, take a walk, get yourself to school, take your brother to soccer, climb a tree, make dinner for the family. I mean, these are things that a lot of kids aren't doing. And it could be any age. I mean, really, our whole program is from K through, we thought it was through 8th, but now we're hearing from high schools where they're assigning the Let Grow project, and kids are driving their sister to, soccer, or making their own dentist appointment and getting themselves there. So when a school does this, everybody, one second, I can hear you and I'm on a webinar. Everybody is doing the same thing at the same time, which is letting go. And so you don't feel like you're the crazy parent.
Yeah.
Right. And also you're talking to the other parents. What are you doing? Oh, I let my kid go get ice cream. Oh, my kid went and got a haircut. And the kids are talking to each other too. You're kidding. You got to go 3 blocks. And so it takes away the stigma. It takes away the fear that, like, if I do this and something goes wrong, everyone's going to blame me. It's like everybody's doing this. And then it gives everybody the same experience, which is seeing their kid come home from doing something. One of my favorite stories was a mom sent her kid out. He wanted to go get his own haircut. Okay. Came home with a mohawk. Okay. She was mad, but then she thought, well, what okay. That's what he wanted. And then she started saying, well, if you can do that by yourself, how about you go to the store? And how about you do this? And she said, and then finally it was, how about you do your homework by yourself? And so it was just the recognition that things might not be perfect. You might hate the mohawk, but it's okay. Yep. Right. And then that changes the whole dynamic. And if a bunch of people are doing it at the same time, the kids are taking a bike ride together, everybody's going for a picnic, suddenly you have a culture that has changed. And we heard one town where they were doing the Let Grow project, and I recommend having your school do it more than once if they're game. A kid went to the store by himself, this little market in town, cute downtown. And the people there were like, what are you doing? Where is your mother? And he's like, oh, I'm doing my Let Grow project. I'm like, what is that? And he said, oh, my Let Grow project is to come to this market, and we all have to do something on our own. And so after that, when other kids came to the market, oh, it's a Let Grow kid. Oh, Let Grow kid. And that's how you re-normalize what I keep talking about, which is the idea of taking your eyes off your kids and them getting some experiences, some good, some bad, and you getting the very fundamental experience of taking your eyes off your kids. Somebody else isn't in charge of them, and they do things on their own. And then they can start doing other things on their own too, so that not everything has to be an organized activity, a couple afternoons a week just for them to daydream, make stuff out of glue, take a walk, ride their bikes. This stuff is fundamental and nourishing. You were talking about your childhood at the beginning.
Yeah.
And the way to give it back to kids is by giving them literally some free time. This is what we've taken out of their lives, and we wonder why they're drooping. And they're drooping because, for the same reason, if you didn't get any sunshine or water, if you didn't get any chance to grow and be the person, the quirky person, the person who puts, string around a horse's neck,
Right.
Not everybody was doing the same thing, but that's who you were. And there is no class in how to put a little rope around some neighbor's horse, right? So you needed to be doing what made sense and what was fulfilling to you to become who you are. So I highly recommend the Let Grow project for teachers, schools, school counselors, principals, headmasters, administrators, because it's not magic. It's just a way of seeing something that has disappeared from our view.
Yeah, I love that idea. As you know, I've got a 13-year-old and I've got a 5-year-old, and of course their capabilities are different. But I remember the first time that I let my older daughter walk to our local coffee shop, which is about a mile away,
Wow.
and go get herself, a hot chocolate or whatever,
or
sugar
double
bomb.
espresso.
Yeah. She, I think she likes it because she can get sugar that we might not have in the house.
That was always my motivating factor when I was going to the candy store. Yeah.
Right. Oh yeah. I remember walking to the convenience store, and when my mom would first let my best friend and I do that, that was a big deal. And of course we got the biggest chocolate bar we could afford. Right.
I'm like You're staying here through an act of will and not going and getting candy bar right now. Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah, it was amazing. And so, but I remember when my daughter came home, because, I had some fear, not around anything happening to her, but as you know, around the judgment, right? Why are you letting your child do this? And I think she was around, trying to remember, probably 10 or 11, the first time that we let her do it. And she came back. First of all, she came back like on the minute that we told her to be back. So she demonstrated that she was responsible. And she had the biggest smile on her face because she had been out and walking around and doing something for herself. And so now she does it on a regular basis. And now she even goes down there and studies. And, we tell her when to be back. And I don't know what they think down at the coffee shop. They haven't said anything to me, but she comes back and I can tell there's just a lightness in her whole demeanor because she's been able to do something completely independently.
So, it makes me glad and it makes me sad. Glad because this is great, and sad because our kids deserve the world too. The world is not reserved for adults, right? The outdoors, the coffee shops, the bike rides. I mean, and we keep depriving them of it. We want to give our kids the best of everything except the world. Oh yeah, that, right? Except independence. I read sometimes kids write little essays about the Let Grow project that they did. And they talk about, there's a couple of themes, but one of them is, I had never noticed blah, blah, blah. And, we've been keeping our kids basically in the passenger seat of their lives. We literally take them places and then we tell them what to do and we encourage, or we give the trophy, or we intervene, or whatever it is, but they're a little bit more passive. I'd say a lot more passive than we were. And so imagine, their joy at I get to order, a hot chocolate. I get to pet the dog. I get to decide I'm going to take a little while and just collect all these leaves because they're beautiful and nobody's waiting. Nobody's saying, come on, come on, come on. It's a fantastic world and our kids deserve it too. And they're only that age once. Yeah, they'll get it when they're 20. It's I'm not sure they'll be that fascinated by a squirrel when they're 20. I'm not sure they're going to want to collect all those leaves when they're 38. Yeah. So our job is to give them the world. You teach them the 3 R's. You teach them to cross the street safely. You teach them to be polite. Don't go off with a stranger. You can talk to them. You can't go off with them. You're the safe parenting person. These are lessons that you're endorsing. And with that, the letting go.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, I love this so much. I have 1,000 questions. I feel like we could talk forever, but what I'd love to do, Lenore, is, it really is, it feels like such a privilege to speak with you after having read your book so many years ago. And it really did, it really has influenced the way that I parented, because I've had to catch myself and pause and say, no, like with the coffee shop, she's going to be fine. She's going to be fine. Lenore's son rode the subway. She'll be fine.
There you go.
It really does, that thought has come into my head. And I remember talking with another parent in our neighborhood. We have a woodsy kind of park near us. And the kids wanted to go play by themselves. And I was like, sure, go. And this other parent wanted to follow them and make, and I was like, please don't.
Oh, good. Okay.
And well, it didn't necessarily go well with the other parent, but I tried, and then I would let my kid go, go play and explore. And she is at 13 pretty independent and capable. She is capable. So I'm not saying she's perfect or that I'm perfect, but we've certainly seen the benefits of some of these things that you've recommended. For those parents who this is kind of a new idea of, bucking the cultural expectations a little bit, are there maybe 3 things that, as they walk away from this conversation, they could say, all right, if I can just do these things, obviously proposing the Let Grow project at schools is a great one. But what are some other specific actions parents can
Yeah.
do this week?
I'd say it's Thanksgiving this week, or is this going to be later? Like, is this
So yeah,
live or what?
we're playing this in February.
Okay. So what I would suggest is have a party, right? The next party you have with some other parents and some other kids, the parents are inside and the kids are outside. It's that simple. Or the kids are in the basement if you're in Seattle, for instance,
Yeah.
if it's freezing or whatever. If you're in Buffalo, okay,
Right.
maybe they're inside. But separate them. Everybody has a better time. The kids want to be around the kids. Different ages together is great, but the parents are a drag. And frankly, having your kid constantly asking you or complaining or needing something, they can get along for, I'd say they can get along for 3 hours without being hydrated, without a healthy snack, without a suggestion for you on how to have more fun.
Yeah.
Just give them a swath of time without you and with some other kids. That's going to work. And if you don't have a party, I work from home. I have a computer. Go to a friend's house with your laptop, who's also working on his or her laptop. Her, let's be frank. And then you stay in the kitchen and you have the coffee and you have your work to do. And the kids are in the backyard, or the kids are down the street at the park. Just try it for a little bit. Try it with another family, because trying it by yourself, the kids are going to be bored. There's nobody to play with. But if you have other kids there, and they don't have to be exactly the same age, your 5-year-old can play with a 9-year-old. They're going to figure out something fun to do.
Mhm.
So that would be one thing. I would also suggest going to your school with the other Let Grow initiative, which is the Let Grow Play Club, which is asking your school to stay open before or after school for mixed ages, everybody together, loose parts, balls, jump ropes, old cardboard boxes, free play. Because that's something that kids are starving for as well. And that's where you have a critical mass of kids. So have them stay after school. You have an adult in the corner with an EpiPen, and otherwise the kids are just having their own fun, right? They're making their own games, they're solving their arguments, and that works really well. Third thing I'd say, maybe give your kid, if you go to Let Grow and you click on, if you have to go to the bottom, it's kind of hard to find, but if you go to letgrow.org, you go to the very bottom, you can click on the Let Grow Kid card. It's free, you print it out, and you'd think I would have one here. I don't. No, sorry. They're this size, but this is not them. And it says, I'm not lost or neglected. I'm a Let Grow kid. I know I can talk to strangers. I just can't go off with them. Look, I'm talking to you. It actually says that, talking to you. Thanks for being concerned. If you don't trust that I'm, that my parents let me be out here, here's a phone number to call. Okay. And they can take that with them. And it's, it's just a little layer of making them feel like, okay, you're supposed to be out there. And if they deal with any, I don't mind people wondering like, are you okay here? Are you lost or whatever? But yeah, I am fine. Here's proof. So I would suggest that.
I love that. And we can share the link for that.
Oh, good. Yeah.
With folks that are watching. So those are 3 really great actionable things people can do. I mean, really, this week. Yeah. Right. Which,
wait, one more. This is number 4. It's not actionable for you. It's for me. The bonus is send me a story. Just like you told me about your daughter going to the cafe and how easy it was once you realized it was not a big deal, and how light she was and how happy and how this became a normal thing. I need those stories, because parents are influenced by other parents. And this is the normalizing part. If you send me a picture or a story, or better still, a picture and a story, I'll put it up someplace. I'll put it on our blog, or if you want it on social media, I can put it on social media, because we want people to see that this is easy and great, and something that is good for both you and your kids.
Yeah.
And so send me the stories and we'll get them out there.
I love
Lenore. So it's Lenore, 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 like you can see down there, at letgrow.org.
Perfect. What I love about that is that if a lot of parents start sending more stories, that can sort of create that tidal wave to battle the other media that we talked about that loves to talk about,
the bad things and what if and whatever. Yeah. You actually put it on your own social media too, if you're game, it's like, that's how we've heard that sometimes the Let Grow project ends up in school districts next to the one where it officially started. It's like, the sister-in-law is like, how come your kid is raking the leaves? My kid doesn't rake the leaves. Oh, it's the Let Grow project. Oh, I'm going to have my school do that. And so it's spreading the word.
Love it. Love it. Lenore, I'm so grateful to you for being a part of this summit, and also, from the bigger picture, just the work that you're putting out in the world. I think
you're welcome.
so many
Look,
of
I
us-
needed a job, right? I'm a newspaper reporter. My newspaper's practically dead. So
but we need this in the world. Parents need this in the world. And, as in the summit, as we're talking about things that parents can do to keep kids safer from the things that are scary or are dangerous, I should say, the things that are dangerous, not
Right.
just scary.
right.
This is a really important balance to remember, that we've got to manage and let go of our own fear so that our kids can grow into the adults that we want them to be.
Right.
Yeah.
And have a fun childhood.
And have a fun childhood. Yes. I'm not advocating, trespassing and stealing people's horses, but
I'm advocating that. There you go. On the record, go steal a horse, kids.
go steal a horse. I sure did have a good time doing it. So, thank you, Lenore. I really, really am grateful for you.
All right. Thanks, Christy. And thank you, people, for watching. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in for yet another week of the Heartful Parent Podcast, and for listening to my conversation with Lenore Skenazy, once known as America's Worst Mom, to think about what are those ways that we can do better for our kids than we have been doing. What are ways that we can build that independence better for our kids than we've been doing? And as I said at the outset of today's podcast episode, I think this is a really lovely companion episode to my solo episode from last week, where I talk about how we need to help our kids build more independence in the world and trust them to be okay. If this resonated with you, if it, struck a nerve in a good way or a bad way, let me know. Reach out, email me, Christy@theheartfulparent.com. And if you enjoy conversations like this, if you are learning from conversations like this, if you feel like the Heartful Parent Podcast is supportive on your parenting journey and opening up new and different ways of thinking about your journey as a parent, please drop a 5-star review wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. That is what helps get the podcast out into the hands of more people. The more 5-star reviews, the more the podcast platforms will promote and sort of share that this podcast is a resource for people. I would love your help in doing that. So go post a review, share the podcast, and I will look forward to seeing you next week for another episode of the Heartful Parent Podcast. Cheers, everyone. Bye.